In this video, I'm going to show you how to airbrush a really basic black and grey skull using my skull tool templates by AirShot Stencils. Let's get into it right now. I'm going to be airbrushing this simple skull on this canvas. It's just an A3 canvas. This is the template set that I'm using, which is the skull tool template, and I'm going to be spraying this particular skull. You can also see with this template that you've got some texture items in here, some more over here, as well as cracks and some of these uneven sections which can be used for grunge. And I also designed some smoother edges which can be used for fire if you wish. Seeing as I'm not using any of the other skulls, what I want to do is just using a bit of masking tape. I'm going to mask around the skull that I want to use to prevent overspray. Now that that's ready and masked up, I want to protect the outside area as well so that my overspray doesn't travel. So I'm just going to use some copy paper. And you can see what I'm doing with the tape. I've got it half on the bit of paper and half off. So this bit's sticky and it can be just placed down and you can easily mask up around the surface. Now we have the skull isolated there and we can just get started with the artwork. Another cool thing to note is that this stencil set comes with the negative and the positives. So this is the positive. You've got all these individual skulls that will fit over the top of the other ones to mask them off. And you can see I've got more of that flame edging there, so you can utilize this to do your real fire or smoke effect once you've finished your skulls. So that's why this is masked up as it is, but there are registration marks so that you can line them up with the other template. So usually I would use a transparent base and put some drops of black in that to create my first tone to use for a black and grey skull. But because this is designed for the beginner in mind, I want to start off using just a regular grey. This is a Mars grey by Trident, and this will become the base that I'm going to work with. Now what I want to do first is position my template, even though I'm only going to use it for the first step to get my outline. Just tack it into place, and I'll just do a spray test on the side. And you can see how dark that is, even though it looks light in the cup. What I can do is just spray lightly with it, and in order to do that, I've got to come further back. But what I would recommend at home is if you're new to airbrushing, mix it up, add a bit of white to it to make it a lot lighter. I'll show you how to do it if you do have a darker mix. You just want to continue working with that. Keep the air pressed on and just a fair distance away from the stencil. I'm about 10 to 15 centimeters away. Just do a light dusting over it, and then what I want to do is establish some of those darker spots. So I'm just going to spray underneath and do a bit of a graduated tone in the eye sockets and the nostril, and also do that within this shadowed area here just to get some of those dark bits in, and I'll do that with the mouth as well. It's the beauty of using stencils. It just makes life a lot easier and quicker. Now I can go ahead and remove that, and you can see within seconds I've already got a nice outline with some shading in there, and I can now continue to render the skull. Now that the base is established, I'm just going to come back in and blend out. Again, moving away from the surface and just add in a little bit of the detail, which I'm going to deepen with my black. And you can do a light dusting over the entire surface if you wish. Remember, less is more. And this is where you would get your negative template from the skull tool set, and you can see I've also got the positive if you were going to do a background color, and can just line this up and then dust in nice and easily with that tone, which I'll do now. Once you're happy, tack it into place. And just using some of the paper from earlier, mask up around it. And I can see one of the registration marks showing up there, so I'll just block that out. And then just give it a light dusting. And this will give you an outline around the entire skull. Now I'm going to utilize some of the texture just to add a little bit more effect to it. So using some of these dot textures. You can move it around. It'll give it the impression of pitting. And a lot of people always ask why skulls. I've always thought they were a great thing to learn. They're very forgiving. If you make a mistake, you can turn it into something, a crack or a black tooth, something like that. And they teach you the fundamentals of shading. So I highly recommend giving them a go. So now I've got a bit of texture in there. I'm just going to continue on with a bit more freehand detailing. You can do a lot more of this freehand. Again, as I mentioned at the start of this video, I'm really trying to showcase how I would go about showing one of my beginners how to do this. So I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible. This part, the teeth, is always the hardest thing and what most people freak out about. If you do have trouble trying to get these teeth in, you can utilize something like a Q-tip and just hold that in place and then aim on the side, and that's going to give you a nice definition, and you can pick out your teeth like so. And it looks dark and messy now, but once I come in with my black, it's going to make it a lot easier to pick out those teeth. You can add in some cracks. Again, you can use the stencil for this, or just do it freehand like I'm showing you here. I think I made a bit of a mistake there. You can see how easy that is to fix. Just redraw it in with the airbrush, and then when you get to the black, just leave that section out. So I'll leave it at that for that tone. Now I want to add in some highlights, so I'm just going to use some white. And with the white, you don't want to go over the darker areas, obviously, the shaded sections. It is highlighting. It might be difficult to see on this video, but ever so slowly. I'll run some in the cracks. The reason I do it before the black is that I can then clean it up. And just be careful if you go over any dark sections with the white, because you can potentially get a blue shift happening. And if you do, you can utilize orange. That's going to fix it, believe it or not. I'll link up to a video in the description below showing you how to remedy your blue shift if you do get it. So some great tips shared by a friend of mine, Drew Blair. So just continuing to brighten up some of those areas, add in some subtleties. Again, you can always come back in once you've done the black if you wish, just to hit a couple of those brighter spots one more time. Just sort of cleaning up the teeth a little. Not too concerned if they look a bit broken and damaged. I mean, it is a skull, all adds to the effect. Again, that's why I like recommending beginners to have a go at a skull, and that's another reason why there's 2 skull exercises as the main exercises in my online course. And the black and grey one in there is tackled using the transparent blacks, as I mentioned at the start of this video. So this is a different way of doing it. I prefer to use the transparent blacks, but they are harder to learn how to use. The video in there goes into full detail of how I do that. Now I'm going to use a black. This is one of my pre-thinned blacks. But with this tone, it's really all about just pulling out those final details and further shaping the skull. So you can see I'm up nice and close and just keeping my detail nice and sharp. Now, because this video is more for the beginner, if you are watching this and you've just started out, don't get disheartened. It takes a while to be able to get this fine detail and control. So if you're struggling to do a lot of this freehand, grab the stencil again. So for instance, you just reline it up and then you can use that to create all your sharp edges. And you're still going to get a really cool looking skull. I just prefer having the sharp edge as well as a bit of that freehand combination. I find it gives the airbrush art a better look. But again, totally up to you. It is art, so just be free with it and create your own version of this particular artwork. You can see I colour in the darkest spots first, and these are the areas that I call safe zones. So if you go too heavy, you can always fix it, blend it out. With a skull, I tend to always start with the eye sockets and the shading. And now you'll notice as well, if I leave a section out, how light it now looks, that grey, whereas before it looked so dark, you thought to yourself you've gone too dark and it's ruined. This is a perfect example of how, starting with that lighter tone, how light that actually is once you start adding your black in. Another thing to note is I don't recommend using black as a shadow colour, so I always recommend that you tone it down if you're working on a coloured artwork. Otherwise you're going to get that potential muddiness. You'll also note how the textures are disappearing now. They're still slightly visible, and that's exactly what I want. I don't want them to be too in your face, but just enough that they show up if you have a close look at this. And they're the little things that make your artwork better than just average. If you have all these little bits of texture and things that when you look at the image, you can't see straight away. Upon closer inspection, you can find all those little textures in there. Just gives it a lot more of a lifelike appearance. And I mean, sure, you can do all this freehand. Skulls aren't that difficult to do, but using a template as a tool is just a smarter way of working. I used to attempt to do everything freehand, and it took so long to get that real sharp edge, nice fine detail. It's definitely possible, but it takes so much longer. And if you do want to do this for a living, time is money, as with any job. So don't think of it as cheating, just think of it as a smart way to get your artwork to still look cool, but you get it done a lot quicker. And the beauty of it is, if you're doing, say, this particular artwork on a Harley tank, for instance, I can use this same skull on both sides, or pick another one from this set, and they're all going to be uniformed. You don't have to sit there and draw up a design. You can literally just work freehand on the surface if you've got enough control and experience. And the customer will be blown away by a very cool looking skull, and for you it's been reasonably easy to achieve. And it also allows people who can't draw to be able to do some cool stuff. Just darkening off in the mouth, you can see how much it's changed. Do a bit of drop shadow here as well. You'll notice I'm not going right around the edge. I don't want to outline it like a cartoon skull. I'm just carefully darkening off some of those areas, adding in some more texture as I go, and then shading as well. in some more shadow along here. Good tip when you're looking at your artwork as well is to squint your eyes. In my case, I can just remove my glasses and everything goes blurry, so it's handy. But if you squint your eyes, what happens is you cut out the detail and it just shows you all the shapes and shadows. And that way you can see where you need to go darker, or if you've gone too dark in a section. It works really well. So you can obviously continue working on that if you wish, add in more detail. You could run some fire off it, you know, a bit of smoke flame. But for the purpose of this video, I'm happy with that. Nice and easy. Hopefully it'll help heaps of beginners and give you the confidence to have a go at something like this. Just remember, if you need to, mix up a couple of extra tones of grey to make it easier to progress to the darker tone, that black mix at the end, because the black is not very forgiving at all. So if you want to learn more, then you can definitely check out our online airbrushing course at airbrushassylum.thinkific.com. But you can also keep learning by watching some of these videos here. And until next time, go grab your airbrush, do some amazing artwork yourself, and I'll see you again very, very soon in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.